Good morning students. In this video we are going to learn the third segment of the lesson, organ and organ systems. Classification of frog. Frogs belong to phylum Chordata. Chordata are the group of organisms that have notochord and nerve cord. Class Amphibia. Frogs are amphibians and hence they are placed under the class Amphibia. Amphi means both. They can live both on land and in water. Order, they belong to the order Anura, which is one of the largest order under Amphibia, and it includes all the frogs and the toads. Genus name Rana and species name Hexadactyla. Rana hexadactyla is placed under the order Anura. They live in the freshwater ponds, streams and moist places. During their early developmental stage, they are fully aquatic and they breathe through the gills. We call this stage as tadpole. Rana hexadactyla are poikilothermic. That means they can adjust their body temperature according to their environmental temperature. Morphology of frog. Frog's body is streamlined body, which will help them to swim in the water. Streamlined means the anterior ends, the terminal ends will be narrow than the middle, and it is dorsoventrally flattened. This is the dorsal side of the organism and ventral side of the organism, and it is divisible into head, trunk. The body is covered by smooth and slimy skin, and it is loosely attached to the body wall. The skin may be dark green in color or it may also vary, but it will be paler at the ventral side. The head is almost triangular in shape and it will have an apex which is called as snout. The mouth is at the anterior end of the body and it can widely open its mouth. External nostrils are present on the dorsal surface of the snout on either side of the median line. Eyes are large and they are protruding. They project above the body surface and lies behind this nostril. They have a movable lower eyelid, a thick immovable upper eyelid, and they have a transparent third eyelid which is called as nictitating membrane, and this nictitating membrane will protect the eye when the frog is inside the water. A pair of tympanic membranes forms the external ear and they lie on the either side of their eyes, and they do not have external ears, neck or tail. The trunk bears two pairs of limbs, a pair of forelimbs and a pair of hind limbs. The posterior end of the dorsal side they have their cloacal aperture, and this is a common aperture for digestive system, excretory system and reproductive system. The forelimb is short and stumpy, and it will help to bear the weight of the body when they are landing after a leap. And each forelimb consists of upper arm, forearm and hand. Hand bears 4 digits. Hind limbs are large and long and they consist of thigh, shank and foot. The foot bears 5 long webbed toes and one small 6th toe is also present, and their body is adapted for leaping and swimming. When the animal is at rest, the hind limb gets the shape of the letter Z. They fold and get the shape of the letter Z. They exhibit sexual dimorphism during breeding season. The male frog will have a pair of vocal sac and a nuptial pad on the ventral side of the first digit of its forelimb. The nuptial pad is considered as a copulatory organ, and the vocal sac will help in giving the croaking sound which will invite the female for copulation. And this vocal sac and the nuptial pad are absent in the case of female frogs. Frogs are different from toads. Let us see the differences between the frogs and toads. Frogs belong to the family Ranidae, whereas the toads belong to the family Bufonidae. Frog's body shape is slender, whereas the toad's body is bulky. The legs are longer in the frogs than the toads. Toads' legs are shorter than frogs. Webbed feet is present in case of frogs, whereas they are absent in the case of toad. Frogs have smooth and moist skin, but the toads have dry skin which is covered with wart-like glands. Teeth is present. Maxillary and vomerine teeth are present in case of frogs, whereas teeth are totally absent in the case of toad. Frogs lays eggs in cluster. Toads lays eggs in strings, in line. Frogs and toads' body are specially designed for jumping because they have greatly elongated hind limbs, and they can live in water as well as on land, and so they belong to the class Amphibia. They can also live on trees, and so they are arboreal. Parental care is seen in few species of toads and frogs. The digestive system of frog. It consists of alimentary canal. An alimentary canal has buccal cavity in the anterior end, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, duodenum, ileum, rectum and cloaca. It leads to the cloacal aperture. The mouth is wide and it opens into the buccal cavity. On the floor of the buccal cavity, a large muscular sticky tongue is present, and this tongue is attached in front of the mouth. At the back it is free. It is attached at the front, and at the back it is free. The free end of the tongue is forked. This is the forked tongue. When the frog sees an insect, it will flick out its tongue, and the insect will get stuck or glued to the sticky tongue, and it immediately withdraws the tongue inside and closes its mouth. A row of small pointed maxillary teeth are present in the upper jaw, on the inner side of the upper jaw. In addition to this maxillary teeth, they have vomerine teeth. They are also present in the upper jaw below the internal nostrils. The lower jaw is devoid of any teeth. Mouth opens into the buccal cavity that leads to the esophagus through pharynx. The esophagus is a short tube. This opens into the stomach, and stomach continues as the intestine. Rectum finally opens outside by the cloaca. Liver is present and it secretes the bile. It is stored in the gallbladder. Pancreas is also present. Pancreas, a digestive gland, is also present, and it produces a pancreatic juice containing digestive enzymes. Food is captured by the bilobed tongue. Digestion takes place by the action of the hydrochloric acid and the gastric juice that are secreted by the stomach wall. Partially digested food, the chyme, will be passed into the intestine from the stomach, and the first part of the intestine is called duodenum. It receives chyme, bile from the gallbladder and pancreatic juice from the pancreas. Bile from the gallbladder, pancreatic juice from the pancreas through a common bile duct. This bile will emulsify the fat, and the pancreatic juices will digest the carbohydrate, proteins and the lipids. Once the digestion is over in the intestine, the digested food is absorbed by the numerous finger-like projections in the inner wall of the intestine, which are called as villi or microvilli. And the undigested food, that is solid waste, the undigested solid waste is removed into the rectum, and it passes out through the cloaca. Anus is the opening at the lower end of the alimentary canal for mammals, and through which it excretes out the solid waste. Whereas the cloaca, it is a common chamber of intestine, urinary system as well as genital system. and all of these system opens into the common chamber which is called cloaca. It is present in birds, reptiles, amphibians, elasmobranch fishes and monotremes. They are the primitive chordates. Frog's respiratory system. Frog respires in two different methods on land and in water. In water, the skin acts as the respiratory organ and it is called as cutaneous respiration. The dissolved oxygen in water will get into the skin by simple diffusion. An exchange of gas takes place by simple diffusion in the skin. On land, the frog respires through the buccal cavity, skin and lungs. They respire through the buccal cavity on land. The mouth will be remained closed. The mouth remains permanently closed when they are on the land. The nostrils will be open. The air is drawn into the buccal cavity through these nostrils. The floor of the buccal cavity will be alternately raised and lowered to draw in and to expel out this air, and it is done repeatedly through the open nostrils. Respiration by lungs is called as pulmonary respiration. Lungs are a pair of elongated pink colored sac-like structure that are present in the upper part of their body. In the trunk region, we call it as thoracic region. Air enters through the nostrils into the buccal cavity, then it enters into the lung through the pharynx. During estivation and the hibernation, the gaseous exchange takes place only through the skin. Frog's blood-vascular system. It consists of heart, blood vessels and blood. Its heart is three-chambered heart. It is covered by double-walled membrane called pericardium. There are two anterior thin-walled chambers called auricles and a single thick-walled posterior chamber called ventricle. Sinus venosus is a large thin-walled triangular chamber that lies on the dorsal side of the heart. Truncus arteriosus is a thick-walled cylindrical structure that is present on the ventral side of the heart. It arises from the ventricle, and as it rises above, it divides into two as right and the left aortic trunk. This will further divide into three aortic arches. Both the branches will divide into three aortic arches each, and these aortic arches are named as carotid, systemic and pulmocutaneous. The carotid artery supplies the blood to the anterior region of the frog, and the systemic arteries of both the sides will run backward and they join posteriorly to form a dorsal aorta, and this dorsal aorta will supply blood to the posterior part of the body, and the pulmocutaneous trunk will supply blood to the lungs and skin. Sinus venosus receives deoxygenated blood from the different parts of the body, and it receives impure blood by two anterior precaval veins. So these are the precaval veins and one posterior postcaval veins. All these will deliver the blood to the right auricle. At the same time, left auricle will receive the blood from the lungs, receive the oxygenated blood from the lungs through pulmonary vein. The renal portal system, which is supplying the blood to the kidney and receiving the blood from the kidney, as well as the hepatic portal system that supply and receives the blood from the liver, are also seen in frog. Blood of frog consists of 60% of plasma and 40% of blood cells. And these blood cells comprises of the red blood cells, white blood cells and platelets. RBCs of frog are loaded with red color pigment and they are nucleated and oval in shape. The white blood cells or the leukocytes are also nucleated and they are circular in shape. Next we will learn the frog's nervous system. Frog's nervous system is divided into central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, and autonomic nervous system. Peripheral nervous system consists of the nerves that are arising from the brain and the spinal cord. In frog there are 10 pairs of cranial nerves and 10 pairs of spinal nerves that will supply the nerves to every part of the body. Autonomic nervous system is divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system controls the involuntary functions of the visceral organs. Visceral organs are the organs that are present in the body cavity. The CNS consists of the brain and the spinal cord, and brain is situated in the skull inside the cranial cavity, and it is covered by two membranes or meninges. They are called as pia mater and dura mater. And the brain of the frog is divided into forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Forebrain is called as prosencephalon, midbrain is called as mesencephalon, and hindbrain is called as rhombencephalon. Forebrain is the anterior most part of the brain, and it is the largest part also. It consists of a pair of olfactory lobes. These are the olfactory lobes: cerebral hemisphere and the diencephalon. The anterior part of this olfactory lobe is narrow and it is free, but at the posterior end they are joined together, and they join and they continue down as the cerebral hemisphere. The olfactory lobes contains a small cavity which is called as olfactory ventricle. So ventricle means cavity. Cerebral hemisphere also contains the lateral ventricles. Next comes the midbrain. Midbrain is called mesencephalon, and they include two large oval shaped optic lobes, and they also possess cavity which are called as optic ventricles. The hindbrain, which is called as rhombencephalon, consists of the cerebellum and medulla oblongata. Cerebellum is a thin, narrow, transverse band of nervous tissue, and this is followed by the oblongata. The medulla oblongata passes out through the foramen of magnum, which is the opening at the base of the skull, and this continues down as the spinal cord, which is enclosed by the vertebral column at the back of the body, at the dorsal side of the frog's body. Frog's excretory system. The elimination of the nitrogenous waste and the salt and the excess water is performed by the excretory system of a frog, and this consists of a pair of kidneys. These are the kidneys. They are dark red color, long flat organs. They lie on either side of the vertebral column in the body cavity. Along with the kidneys, they have the ureters. These are the two tubular structures that arise from each of the kidneys. They are called as ureters, that will pass the urine that is filtered from the blood by the kidney to the urinary bladder. And this is the urinary bladder. This opens into the common opening which is called as cloaca. The kidney of frogs are said to be mesonephric. We know there are three types of kidneys, that they are pronephric, mesonephric and metanephric. Human kidney is metanephric, whereas the frog's kidney are mesonephric, which are not very well developed as the metanephric kidneys. These kidneys separate the nitrogenous waste from the blood, and they excrete this urea. They excrete out urea, and so frogs are ureotelic organisms. The pair of ureters that emerges from the kidney will drain the urine from the kidney, and they opens into the cloaca. A thin-walled unpaired urinary bladder is present. The urinary bladder is thin-walled and it is unpaired, and it is present ventral to the rectum that opens into the cloaca. Reproductive system of frogs. The male frog has a pair of testes. These are the pair of testes, and they are attached to the kidney and to the dorsal body wall by the fold of peritoneum, is called as mesorchium. From these testes, vas efferentia arises. which will collect the maturing sperm from the testes and they will lead it into the kidney, and these vast efferentia will enter into the kidney on both the side and open into the Bidder's canal. After opening into the Bidder's canal, and finally they communicate with the urinogenital duct that comes out of the kidney, and this will open into the cloaca. Whereas the female reproductive system consists of a pair of ovaries, and they are also attached to the kidneys and the body wall, dorsal body wall, by the fold of peritoneum, which is called as mesovarium here, mesovarium. And there is a pair of coiled structure which is called as oviduct. They lie on the sides of the kidney. These are the oviducts, and each oviduct opens into the body cavity, and each of this oviduct opens into the body cavity at the anterior end by a funnel shaped structure with an opening called ostia. Unlike the male frogs, the female frogs will have a separate genital duct. They are not united with the ureter. So the female frogs have the separate genital duct and a distinct ureter. Posteriorly, this oviduct will be dilated a little to form a ovisac, and after which they will enter into the cloaca where they open. The ovisac will store the eggs temporarily before they are sent out through the cloaca, and the fertilization is external. It takes place outside the body of the organism. Metamorphosis of frog. After egg laying, a few days after fertilization, the young ones hatch out and they are called as tadpole. The tadpole that comes out of the egg will have little amount of yolk in their body which they use for their growth, and these tadpoles grow and metamorphoses into an air-breathing carnivorous adult frog. So during their metamorphosis, their limbs will grow, but the tail and the gills will disappear. The mouth becomes broadened, developing the teeth and the jaws inside. And the lungs also becomes functional as they grow, as they metamorphose. What are the economic importance of frog? Frog is an important organism in the food chain. It helps to maintain the ecosystem. Without frog, the food chain becomes incomplete, and so the frogs should be protected. Frogs are beneficial to man because they feed on the insect and help to reduce the insect pest population, which is a great help for the farmers as well as human beings. Frogs are used as traditional medicine. They are used for controlling the blood pressure, and they are used for their anti-aging properties. In USA, Japan, China and northeast of India, frogs are consumed as delicious food as they have high nutritive value.